Flight attendant sneered. Black mother asked to prove white baby was hers during flight, then a passenger pulled out her phone and started recording. She needs to prove that baby is hers. Now. The flight attendant's voice cuts through the cabin noise like a knife, her lips curling into what can only be described as a sneer. 32-year-old Tamara Jackson cradles her crying 6-month-old son closer to her chest, the infant's pale skin a stark contrast against her dark complexion. The other passengers have gone quiet, all eyes fixed on the confrontation unfolding in the narrow aisle of Flight 2187. "I've already shown you his birth certificate," Tamara says, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I've shown you my ID. What more do you want from me?" The flight attendant, her name tag reads Patricia, leans closer, her voice dropping to a stage whisper that somehow carries through the entire cabin. "Anyone can get fake documents these days." "That child doesn't look like yours." A collective gasp ripples through the cabin. Tamara feels her cheeks burn with humiliation and rage. Her son, sensing his mother's distress, wails louder. That's when the woman in seat 14C stands up. She's in her 60s, silver-haired and wearing a cardigan despite the June heat. Without a word, she pulls out her phone and points it directly at the flight attendant. The red recording light blinks on. "I think we all need a record of this," the woman says, her voice calm but firm. "Please continue explaining why this mother needs to prove her baby belongs to her." The flight attendant's face drains of color as she realizes what's happening. In the window reflection, Tamara catches a glimpse of other phones coming up, other passengers joining in silent solidarity. Within seconds, the confrontation has transformed from one woman's humiliation to a moment that will soon ricochet across millions of screens worldwide. But to understand how we got here, to this pressurized cabin at 35,000 feet where decades of prejudice, privilege, and protection are about to collide, we need to go back to where Tamara's day began, 12 hours earlier. The alarm blares at 4:30 a.m., jarring Tamara from the first decent sleep she's had in weeks. Before her hand can even find the snooze button, the baby monitor lights up with Elijah's fussing. Her son, always in tune with her schedule, rarely sleeps past her alarm. Tamara sighs, sliding her feet into the slippers beside her bed. This is her first time flying with Elijah, and her anxiety has been building for days. "It's just a 2-hour flight," she whispers to herself, a mantra she's repeated since booking the tickets to her mother's retirement celebration in Chicago. People fly with babies every day. But Tamara knows it's not just the logistics of traveling with an infant that has her stomach in knots. It's the looks, the questions, the assumptions she's been fielding since the day Elijah was born. As a single black mother to a child who presents as white, she's become accustomed to the sidelong glances, the intrusive questions from strangers. "Are you the nanny? Is he adopted? Where's his real mom?" The first light of dawn barely filters through her bedroom curtains as she makes her way to the nursery. The room is a soothing palette of greens and yellows, deliberately gender-neutral and free from the cliched blues she'd never quite connected with. A hand-painted mural of a forest covers one wall, creatures peeking from behind trees and flowers. Tamara's mother, a talented artist in her own right, had spent weeks on it before Elijah's birth, insisting her grandson deserved a magical space. Elijah stands in his crib, tiny hands gripping the rails, his face brightening as Tamara enters. His wispy blonde curls catch the soft glow of the nightlight, forming a halo around his head. For a moment, Tamara simply watches him, this miracle who came into her life during its darkest chapter. "Good morning, my love," she murmurs, lifting him into her arms. He smells of baby lotion and that indefinable sweet scent that seems to cling to all infants. His tiny fingers immediately reach for her face, patting her cheeks in a morning ritual they've established. If you're finding this story compelling and want to see how this unfolds, make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our new content. The nursery walls hold memories of a marriage that didn't survive. Photos of Tamara and Michael on their wedding day, her resplendent in ivory, him tall and Nordic handsome in his tailored suit. They'd met in nursing school, both determined to work in pediatrics. Their romance had been swift and passionate, the kind friends envied. But beneath the surface, fault lines had already formed. Michael wanted to travel to work with Doctors Without Borders. Tamara dreamed of establishing roots, of family dinners and weekend traditions. "Your daddy loved adventure," Tamara tells Elijah as she changes his diaper, a one-sided conversation she often has during these quiet morning moments. "He's in Ecuador now, I think. Or maybe Peru." The last postcard had come 3 months ago, a brief note scrawled on the back of Machu Picchu. No mention of the son Michael had never met, just a cursory update on his medical work in remote villages. The divorce had been finalized 2 months before Elijah's birth. Michael had signed away his parental rights without hesitation, his signature on the papers as decisive as everything else he did. "I'm not father material," he'd said during their last conversation. "You've always known that." What he hadn't known, what neither of them could have predicted, was how completely Elijah would inherit his father's physical traits while somehow embodying Tamara's temperament. The geneticist in her found it fascinating. The mother in her found it occasionally exhausting to explain. In the kitchen, Tamara expertly balances Elijah on her hip while preparing his bottle. Her condo in Minneapolis is modest but meticulously organized, a necessity when juggling single motherhood with her career as a pediatric nurse. Photos line the refrigerator, Tamara in her graduation gown, Tamara and Michael on their wedding day, the ultrasound picture that changed everything. Michael hadn't wanted children, had made that clear from the beginning. When the unexpected pregnancy test turned positive, their already strained marriage reached its breaking point. "Your father may have walked away," she murmurs into Elijah's soft curls as he drinks, "but that doesn't mean he didn't leave his mark on you." The baby's fair skin and blue eyes, a carbon copy of Michael's Norwegian ancestry, have been both a blessing and a curse. A blessing because they're a reminder of the few good times in her marriage. A curse because of moments exactly like the one she'll face hours later on that plane. The bottle empties quickly. Elijah is always hungry in the mornings, as if making up for the night's fast. Tamara burps him, a towel draped over her shoulder to protect her uniform navy scrubs she won't change out of until they reach the airport. Her shift ended at midnight, leaving her just enough time to catch a few hours of sleep before this early flight. Her phone chimes with a text message. It's from Layla, her next-door neighbor and Elijah's regular babysitter. "Layla, you guys up? Want me to come help with last-minute packing?" Tamara smiles, grateful once again for the support system she's built. Layla, a retired elementary school teacher, had appeared on her doorstep the day Tamara brought Elijah home from the hospital, casserole in hand and practical advice at the ready. "Tamara, we're up. No need to come over, but thanks for offering. See you when we get back Sunday. Layla, I'll be here. Call when you land so I know you arrived safely. And Tamara, remember what we talked about. Don't let anyone make you feel less than." That last line makes Tamara's throat tighten. She'd shared with Layla some of the encounters she'd experienced. The questioning looks at the grocery store, the pediatrician who had asked 3 times if she was Elijah's mother, the woman at the park who'd called security because she was concerned about a black woman with a white baby. Layla, whose own children are biracial, had listened without judgment, then shared her own stories from decades earlier. "It doesn't get easier," she'd said, "but you get stronger." Tamara hopes that's true as she sets Elijah in his bouncer and begins gathering the day's necessities. The diaper bag is already packed. She'd triple-checked it last night, but there are always last-minute additions. An extra pacifier, a new board book about airplanes that might distract him during the flight. The stuffed lion that has become his security object. She moves through the condo with practiced efficiency, the routine of motherhood now as natural as breathing. In the bathroom, she quickly applies minimal makeup, just enough to feel put together. Her reflection shows the shadows beneath her eyes, evidence of too many night shifts and not enough rest. But there's a strength there too, a resilience that wasn't visible in the wedding photos on her refrigerator. The Uber arrives at 6:15 a.m. and Tamara mentally checks her inventory one last time. Diaper bag, extra clothes, birth certificate, always the birth certificate. Her own ID, bottle warmer, favorite blanket, noise-canceling headphones, pacifiers. The driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, helps her load the collapsible stroller into the trunk. "First time flying with the little one?" he asks conversationally as they pull away from the curb. "Is it that obvious?" Tamara manages a tired smile. "Only because you've packed like you're moving continents," he chuckles. "Don't worry, my daughter just flew with her twins to Seattle. If she survived that, you'll be fine with just one." The normalcy of the exchange, the absence of the question she's always bracing for, loosens something in Tamara's chest. Maybe today will be one of the good days. The drive to the airport takes them through a Minneapolis still waking up. Street lights gleam on wet pavement, the aftermath of an overnight rain. Elijah watches the passing scenery with wide-eyed fascination, his tiny hand pressed against the car window. The driver catches Tamara's eye in the rearview mirror. "Handsome little guy," he comments. "Those eyes are something else." "Thank you," Tamara replies, the automatic response she's perfected. Not he gets them from his father or any other explanation, just a simple acknowledgement of the compliment. My youngest had eyes like that when she was born, the driver continues, oblivious to Tamara's measured response. Blue as the ocean, turned brown by her first birthday, though. Genetics are funny that way. Tamara nods, allowing the conversation to flow past her. She's learned when to engage and when to simply let people talk. This driver seems genuinely friendly, with no agenda beyond passing the time during their journey. As they approach the airport, the skyline silhouetted against the brightening sky, Tamara feels a ripple of anxiety. Flying itself doesn't bother her. She's traveled extensively, both for work and pleasure. But flying with Elijah, navigating the crowded terminals and security checkpoints with an infant and all his necessities, feels like stepping into uncharted territory. The driver senses her tension. You know what my daughter says about traveling with kids. Lower your expectations to the floor, then drop them in the basement. That way, anything above disaster feels like a win. Tamara laughs, genuinely this time. That's actually really good advice. She's got 3 under 5, so she knows what she's talking about, the driver says as he pulls up to the departure's curb. He helps unload her bags and assembles the stroller with surprising expertise. My daughter has the same model, he explains, noticing Tamara's impressed look. Tamara settles Elijah into the stroller, tucks a blanket around him against the morning chill, and offers the driver a generous tip. No need for that, he says, waving it away. Just pay it forward when you see another parent struggling. With a friendly salute, he returns to his car, leaving Tamara feeling unexpectedly buoyed by the encounter. The departure terminal bustles with early morning travelers, business people with their polished shoes and rolling briefcases, families corralling sleepy children, couples embarking on adventures. Tamara navigates through the crowd, the stroller creating a small bubble of space around them. At the check-in counter, she presents her ID and Elijah's birth certificate without being asked, a preemptive measure born of experience. The agent, a woman with graying hair and a nameplate reading Gloria, smiles warmly at Elijah. First flight, she asks, directing the question to the baby, who responds with a delighted gurgle. First for him, not for me, Tamara confirms. Gloria types efficiently, her acrylic nails clicking against the keyboard. I've got you in a window seat, row 14. We've blocked the middle seat to give you a bit more room with the little one, and you're all checked in for early boarding. Thank you, Tamara says, relief washing over her. The empty middle seat will make a world of difference. No problem at all. Gloria prints the boarding passes and hands them over along with a small plastic set of wings. For his baby book, she says with a wink. First flight is a big milestone. This simple kindness, this recognition of Elijah as a child embarking on a new experience rather than a curiosity to be questioned, almost brings tears to Tamara's eyes. She blinks them away quickly, thanking Gloria again before heading towards security. The TSA checkpoint looms ahead, a gauntlet of conveyor belts, metal detectors, and uniformed agents. Tamara has researched the procedures for traveling with an infant, how formula and breast milk are exempt from liquid restrictions, how baby carriers must go through the X-ray machine, but children are carried through the metal detector. Knowledge is armor, she's learned. The more prepared she is, the less vulnerable she feels. She joins the line, beginning the process of unpacking what needs to be scanned separately. Her laptop, the diaper bag liquids, her shoes. Elijah watches with interest from the stroller, seemingly fascinated by the hustle and organized chaos. The line moves slowly but steadily. When it's finally their turn, a TSA agent approaches, a middle-aged man with a shaved head and forearms covered in tattoos peeking out from his uniform sleeves. Ma'am, you'll need to collapse the stroller to go through the scanner, he says, his tone neutral but not unkind. Tamara nods, lifting Elijah out and balancing him on her hip while she one-handedly folds the stroller. Years of nursing have given her a knack for managing multiple tasks while holding a child. The agent watches, then offers unexpected assistance. Let me get that for you, he says, taking the folded stroller and placing it on the conveyor belt. You can carry the little guy through the metal detector when you're ready. Tamara thanks him, placing her shoes and jacket in a bin, tucking her boarding pass and ID into a pocket. She's a seasoned traveler, efficient and organized, but traveling with an infant adds layers of complexity to even the simplest procedures. She walks through the metal detector, Elijah secure in her arms. The machine remains silent. On the other side, another agent, this one younger, with close-cropped hair and a rigid posture, gestures her to the side. ID and boarding pass, please, he says, his gaze moving from Tamara to Elijah with barely concealed suspicion. Tamara retrieves the documents from her pocket, presenting them along with Elijah's birth certificate. The agent studies them closely, his brow furrowed. "This is your child," he asks, though the document clearly states her name under mother. "Yes," Tamara replies, keeping her voice neutral. "My son." The agent's eyes linger a beat too long before he nods, waving them through to collect their belongings. Tamara feels the familiar heat rising in her neck, the tension headache that always accompanies these moments. She knows what the agent is thinking, has heard the whispers before. Some people believe she must have stolen this child, or that she's trafficking him, because how else could a black woman have a white baby? She reclaims the stroller, reassembles it with practiced movements, and tucks Elijah back inside. Her hands tremble slightly as she gathers the rest of their things, not from fear but from the effort of containing her anger, of maintaining the calm exterior that keeps situations from escalating. An older woman standing nearby, perhaps in her 70s, with stylish silver hair and designer luggage, has been watching the exchange. As Tamara finishes organizing her belongings, the woman approaches. "Some people shouldn't be in positions of authority," she says quietly, nodding toward the TSA agent who has already moved on to the next traveler. "My grandchildren are biracial. I've seen that look before." Tamara doesn't know how to respond to this unexpected solidarity. She manages a grateful nod before pushing the stroller toward the terminal, Elijah babbling happily, unaware of the tension surrounding his mother. The walk to their gate takes them past shops just opening for the day, newsstands with their colorful magazine covers, coffee kiosks with lines already forming, gift shops selling overpriced souvenirs and travel necessities. The terminal smells of coffee and cinnamon rolls, of cleaning products, and the indefinable scent of thousands of people passing through a shared space. Tamara stops at a cafe, ordering a large coffee and a banana for herself, a small container of yogurt for Elijah, who has recently discovered the joy of this new food. They find a quiet corner near their gate where she can feed him while watching the plane's taxi on the tarmac. "See the airplanes?" she says, pointing out the window. Elijah follows her gesture, his eyes widening at the massive machines moving across the concrete. "We're going to ride on one of those. Isn't that exciting?" A businessman at a nearby table glances over, his expression softening at the sight of mother and child. "First flight?" he asks. "For him, yes," Tamara replies, now accustomed to the question. "My daughter was about his age for her first flight," the man says. "Pro tip, have him drink something during takeoff and landing, helps with the ear pressure." "Bottles are packed and ready," Tamara confirms, appreciating the straightforward advice unaccompanied by intrusive questions. The businessman nods approvingly. "You're ahead of the game, then. My wife and I learned that lesson the hard way." He returns to his newspaper, the brief interaction complete. These normal exchanges, these moments where she's seen as just another parent navigating the challenges of traveling with a child, are what Tamara clings to. They're reminders that for every person who questions her relationship to her son, there are others who simply see a mother and baby going about their day. The gate area for Flight 2187 to Chicago O'Hare is already crowded when Tamara arrives. She finds a seat near the window, positioning herself away from the main flow of traffic. Elijah is awake now, cooing and grabbing at her necklace, a simple gold pendant with his initials that her mother gave her after his birth. An elderly couple sits down across from her, the woman immediately making faces at Elijah, who rewards her with a gummy smile. "Well, aren't you just the most handsome little man?" the woman says. Her husband nods in agreement, then turns to Tamara with the inevitable question. "Are you his nanny?" Tamara takes a deep breath. "No, I'm his mother." The woman looks confused for a moment, then her face clears with understanding. "Oh, adopted, how wonderful." "Actually, he's my biological son," Tamara says, the words so familiar they might as well be printed on a card she hands out. "He takes after his father." "Oh my," the woman says, clearly flustered. Her husband tugs at her sleeve, murmuring something Tamara can't hear. They move seats within minutes. Tamara tries not to let the encounter bother her. It's minor compared to some she's experienced, a mere paper cut against the deeper wounds others have inflicted. Still, each one stings, each one reminds her that in the eyes of many, her motherhood requires explanation, justification, proof. She pulls out her phone, scrolling through messages from her mother. "Mom, can't wait to see my beautiful grandson tomorrow. The whole church is excited to meet him." "Mom, did you remember to pack his church outfit?" "Mom, flight's still on time?" Tamara smiles despite her exhaustion. Her mother's retirement after 30 years as an elementary school principal is a big deal. 3 days of celebrations, culminating in a special recognition at their family church. It means everything that she can be there with Elijah. She types a quick response. "Tamara, on time so far, church outfit packed. See you in a couple hours. Her mother replies immediately, Mom, perfect. Reverend Johnson keeps asking if you're really bringing my grandson. I think he doesn't believe I'm old enough to be a grandmother. This makes Tamara laugh out loud. Her mother at 62 is indeed youthful, still running half marathons and taking dance classes, her braids now streaked with gray but her energy undiminished. Growing up, Tamara had sometimes felt overshadowed by her mother's vibrant personality and community presence. Now she's grateful for the strength that lineage has given her, the resilience she hopes to pass on to Elijah. The boarding announcement crackles over the speakers, and Tamara gathers her belongings. The gate agent calls for families with small children and passengers needing assistance to board first. Tamara joins the small line, adjusting Elijah in his carrier. A woman in a business suit behind her sighs loudly. Shouldn't there be a separate flight for people with babies? She mutters to her companion, just loud enough for Tamara to hear. Tamara pretends not to notice, focusing instead on the gate agent who's scanning boarding passes. The woman, middle-aged with a practiced smile, barely glances at Tamara until she hands over both her boarding pass and Elijah's birth certificate. I didn't ask for that, the agent says, looking confused. Force of habit, Tamara explains, tucking the document back into her purse. Better to have it ready. The agent's eyes soften with understanding. You're all set, Ms. Jackson. Have a good flight. The jetway stretches before them, and Tamara steels herself for the next challenge. Finding her seat while managing a baby, a diaper bag, and a carry-on in the cramped confines of an airplane cabin. She's booked a window seat, hoping Elijah might be soothed by watching the clouds once they're airborne. The flight attendants greeting passengers at the door offer practiced smiles. Welcome aboard, says one, a blonde woman in her 40s whose name tag reads Patricia. Her smile falters slightly as her gaze moves from Tamara to Elijah and back again. It's a micro-expression, gone in an instant, but Tamara has become adept at recognizing that flicker of confusion, of assumption, of judgment. A second flight attendant, younger with dark hair pulled into a neat bun, offers a more genuine welcome. What a cutie, she says, wiggling her fingers at Elijah, who responds with a delighted gurgle. Her name tag reads Jessica. The contrast between the two flight attendants' reactions is subtle but unmistakable. Tamara has learned to identify potential allies and potential problems within seconds of meeting people, a survival skill honed through necessity. The aisle of the aircraft seems narrower than Tamara remembers from previous flights, or perhaps it's just the additional challenge of navigating it with an infant. Other passengers are still settling in, stowing bags in overhead compartments, arranging themselves in their assigned seats. Some offer smiles as she passes, others avert their eyes, a few frown at the prospect of a baby on their flight. Where are you watching from? Your first trip with the little one for a special occasion. Brave woman. Margaret's eyes twinkle with understanding. I'm not sure if it's bravery or insanity, Tamara admits with a small laugh. My mom would never forgive me if she didn't get to show off her grandson at her retirement party. Grandmothers have their priorities, Margaret agrees. Mine live in Boston. I try to visit at least once a year. Their cousins are all around the same age, so it's chaos, but the good kind. The casual conversation, the normal exchange about family and travel, feels like a gift. Tamara finds herself genuinely engaging rather than maintaining the guarded posture she often adopts. What takes you to Chicago? She asks. A conference, Margaret replies. I'm semi-retired now, but I still consult occasionally, mostly pro bono work these days. What field, if you don't mind my asking? Civil rights law, Margaret says, 40 years and counting, started back when, she pauses, a shadow crossing her face. Well, let's just say things have changed, but not as much as we'd hoped. The plane gradually fills with the remaining passengers. A businessman takes the aisle seat across from them, immediately donning noise-canceling headphones and closing his eyes. The middle seat beside Tamara remains empty, a small mercy that gives her extra room to manage Elijah during the flight. As the final passengers board, Tamara notices the flight attendant named Patricia watching her from the galley area. There's something in her gaze that makes Tamara instinctively hold Elijah a little closer. You okay? Margaret asks, observing the subtle change in Tamara's posture. Fine, Tamara says automatically, then reconsiders. Actually, the flight attendant up front, the blonde one, she gave us an odd look when we boarded. I'm probably being oversensitive. Margaret glances toward the galley, her expression thoughtful. Maybe, or maybe your radar is picking up something real. Either way, you're not alone on this flight. The simple reassurance, you're not alone, settles over Tamara like a protective blanket. She spent so much of the past 6 months feeling isolated. navigating new motherhood without a partner, fielding intrusive questions and assumptions without consistent support. Having an ally, even a temporary one on a short flight, feels unexpectedly significant. The cabin door closes, and the flight attendants begin their safety demonstration. Elijah watches with fascination as Patricia demonstrates how to use the oxygen masks, his blue eyes wide with wonder at the new experience. Tamara bounces him gently on her knee, relieved that he seems content for now. As the plane begins to taxi, she offers him a bottle to help with the ear pressure during takeoff. Elijah drinks eagerly, his tiny hand wrapped around her index finger. Tamara gazes out the window at the airport growing smaller, at the world tilting as they ascend into the clouds. For a moment, suspended between earth and sky, everything feels peaceful. The ascent is smooth, the clear June morning offering perfect flying conditions. Elijah remains remarkably calm, his eyes growing heavy as the bottle empties. By the time the plane levels off at cruising altitude, he's fallen asleep in Tamara's arms, the stuffed elephant still clutched in one tiny fist. "First hurdle cleared," Margaret whispers, nodding toward the sleeping baby. "He's a natural." Tamara smiles, carefully shifting Elijah to a more comfortable position. "Don't jinx it," she whispers back. "We still have an hour and a half to go." Margaret mimes zipping her lips, then returns to her book, leaving Tamara to her own thoughts. Through the window, the landscape below has transformed into a patchwork quilt of fields and forests, intersected by the silver ribbons of rivers and highways. Elijah's weight against her chest is warm and solid, his rhythmic breathing a counterpoint to the steady hum of the engines. These quiet moments, these pauses in the chaos of new motherhood, are rare treasures. Tamara allows herself to simply be present, to appreciate the miracle of this child who came into her life against all odds. She thinks about the journey that brought them here, not just the early morning Uber ride to the airport, but the longer path that began with a positive pregnancy test and Michael's subsequent departure. The pregnancy had been difficult from the start. Severe morning sickness, anemia, the stress of a crumbling marriage, all had taken their toll. By the time she reached her third trimester, Tamara was living alone in what had been their shared condo, Michael having moved out after making his position clear. "I never wanted kids," he'd said during their last real conversation. "You knew that from the beginning." It was true. He'd been honest about his plans to work internationally, to remain unencumbered by permanent ties. Tamara had convinced herself that he would change his mind eventually, that the right time would come. When the unplanned pregnancy happened, she'd hoped it might bridge the growing distance between them. Instead, it had been the final fracture. The divorce was civil but swift. Michael had offered financial support. He wasn't cruel, just determined to live life on his own terms. Tamara had refused, her pride perhaps overriding practicality. She had her nursing career, her savings, her family support. What she didn't have was the fairy-tale ending she'd once imagined. Elijah shifts in his sleep, making the small, snuffling sounds that always tug at Tamara's heart. She strokes his cheek gently, marveling again at how this child conceived in the dying days of a doomed marriage has become the center of her universe. The seatbelt sign pings off, and flight attendants begin to move through the cabin with the beverage cart. Jessica, the dark-haired one who had admired Elijah earlier, smiles as she approaches their row. "Can I get you ladies anything to drink?" She asks in a hushed tone, noticing the sleeping baby. "Water, please," Tamara requests. "Same for me," Margaret adds. Jessica distributes the plastic cups and napkins with practiced efficiency. "He's being so good," she comments, nodding toward Elijah. "Most babies have a tough time with the pressure changes." "We got lucky," Tamara agrees, accepting her water with a grateful smile. Jessica moves on to the next row, but Patricia appears behind her, ostensibly to assist with the service, but her attention clearly focused on Tamara and Elijah. She studies them openly, her expression somewhere between curious and suspicious. "First time flying with your charge?" Patricia asks, emphasizing the last word in a way that makes her assumption clear. Tamara feels her shoulders tense. "My son," she corrects firmly. "And yes, his first flight." Patricia's eyes narrow slightly. "Really?" "Your son," the doubt in her voice is unmistakable. Before Tamara can respond, Margaret interjects smoothly. "He has his mother's chin, don't you think? That same determined little dimple." Patricia blinks, clearly not expecting the intervention. "I suppose," she says without conviction, then moves on to assist another passenger. "Thank you," Tamara murmurs once Patricia is out of earshot. Margaret waves away the thanks. "Some people are determined to see the world through their own narrow lens. It says more about them than it does about you." The moment passes, but Tamara remains on edge, aware that Patricia's interest in them seems unusually focused. She's experienced similar scrutiny before, the lingering looks, the unspoken questions, but there's something particularly unsettling about being the object of such attention in the confined space of an aircraft, with nowhere to retreat. Elijah continues to sleep peacefully, unaware of the undercurrents swirling around him. Tamara envies his innocence, his ability to exist in the moment without the weight of history or expectation. Someday, she knows, he'll begin to notice the stares, to question why people seem confused by his family composition. She hopes that by then, she'll have the right words to explain, to fortify him against the ignorance they'll inevitably encounter. The flight proceeds without incident for the next 20 minutes. Tamara manages to sip her water and even flip through the in-flight magazine while Elijah sleeps. Margaret returns to her novel, though Tamara notices she seems more alert now, more attuned to their surroundings. The businessman across the aisle has fallen asleep, his head tilted at an uncomfortable-looking angle against the window. Then, without warning, the peaceful interlude ends. Elijah wakes with a startled cry that quickly escalates to full-throated wails. The transition from sleep to distress happens so suddenly that Tamara is momentarily caught off guard. Hey, what's wrong, sweet boy?" she murmurs, immediately checking his diaper, offering a pacifier, attempting the usual soothing techniques. Nothing helps. His face reddens with the effort of his cries, tiny fists clenched in apparent discomfort. The businessman across the aisle stirs, frowning as he adjusts his headphones. Other passengers turn in their seats, some with sympathy, others with poorly concealed annoyance. Tamara feels the familiar flush of embarrassment creeping up her neck, the pressure of being a public spectacle. "Could be his ears," Margaret suggests quietly. "The pressure can build up even during level flight. Try a bottle." Tamara nods gratefully, retrieving a prepared bottle from the diaper bag. Elijah refuses it at first, turning his head away with increasing distress. His cries grow louder, seeming to fill the entire cabin despite its size. "I'm so sorry," Tamara says to no one in particular, her voice tight with tension. "He's usually not like this." "Don't apologize," Margaret says firmly. "He's a baby, babies cry. Anyone who's forgotten that can invest in some earplugs." The support helps, but Elijah's distress continues unabated. Tamara tries every trick in her arsenal, rocking, singing softly, offering different toys. The stuffed elephant is thrown to the floor in protest. The pacifier follows moments later. Patricia appears at the end of their row, her expression a mixture of concern and irritation. "Is there a problem here?" she asks, though the answer is obviously yes. "He's just having a rough moment," Tamara explains, continuing to rock Elijah gently. "I think it might be the pressure change. It's quite disruptive," Patricia points out unnecessarily. Other passengers are trying to work or rest. The criticism, thinly veiled as concern, stings. Tamara bites back a sharp retort, aware that escalating the situation won't help anyone, least of all Elijah. "I'm doing my best," she says instead, her voice level despite the emotion churning beneath the surface. "Sometimes walking helps," Margaret suggests, changing tactics. "Want me to hold your bags while you take him up and down the aisle?" Tamara nods gratefully, unbuckling her seatbelt and standing carefully in the limited space. Elijah continues to cry as she makes her way into the aisle, his face reddening with the effort. She can feel the stares of other passengers, some sympathetic, others annoyed. "Sorry," she murmurs as she passes each row. "Teething, I think." She walks slowly toward the back of the plane, patting Elijah's back in a steady rhythm. His cries gradually soften to hiccuping sobs, his head heavy against her shoulder. By the time they reach the galley, he's quieted enough that Tamara thinks they might make it through the flight after all. The flight attendants are preparing the beverage service. Two of them smile understandingly as Tamara approaches. Patricia, who has followed them down the aisle, is less welcoming. "You'll need to return to your seat soon," she says, her tone clipped. "We're starting service." "Of course," Tamara replies, "just trying to calm him down first." Patricia's gaze moves from Tamara to Elijah, that same flicker of something crossing her face. "Is that your baby?" she asks, her voice lowered but clearly audible to the other flight attendants who exchange uncomfortable glances. The question hangs in the air, loaded with implication. Tamara feels her spine stiffen, the familiar surge of indignation rising. But she's in a metal tube hurling through the sky at hundreds of miles per hour, her son finally quiet in her arms. This is not the place for confrontation. "Yes," she says simply. "My son." Patricia's eyes narrow slightly. "He doesn't look like your son." One of the other flight attendants, Jessica, touches Patricia's arm. "Pat, the cart is ready." Patricia ignores her. "It's just unusual, that's all," she continues, her tone suggesting she's being reasonable. "A baby that looks like that with a mother who looks like you." My son is mixed race, Tamara explains, though she knows she shouldn't have to. His father is white. Patricia hums, unconvinced. Do you have any identification for him, proof that he's yours? Jessica interjects more firmly. Patricia, we need to start service. Ma'am, you and your baby can head back to your seat now. Tamara nods, turning away before her expression can betray her anger. As she walks back up the aisle, Elijah once again peaceful against her shoulder, she can hear the flight attendants whispering behind her. The word trafficking reaches her ears, sending a chill down her spine despite the cabin's warmth. Back at row 14, Margaret helps her get settled again. Everything okay? She asks, noting Tamara's tense expression. Just the usual, Tamara sighs, adjusting Elijah on her lap. The baby, exhausted from his crying jag, is already drifting to sleep. Margaret frowns. The usual, questions about whether he's really mine, Tamara explains quietly. It happens more often than you'd think. Margaret's eyes widen, then narrow with understanding. Because he's fair-skinned and you're not. For heaven's sake, it's the 21st century. Tamara gives her a rueful smile. Calendar dates don't automatically change people's minds. The next 15 minutes pass without incident. Elijah sleeps against Tamara's chest, his earlier distress forgotten. Margaret engages Tamara in quiet conversation about her work in Minneapolis, her mother's career as a school principal, the challenges of balancing single parenthood with a demanding profession. The normalcy of the exchange is a balm after the tense interaction in the galley. The beverage cart makes its way slowly down the aisle, Jessica and another flight attendant serving from the front while Patricia works from the back. When they reach row 14, Jessica offers them drinks with a warm smile. What a good baby, she says, noting Elijah's now peaceful slumber. Apple juice, water, or soda? Water, please, Tamara says, and thank you. As Jessica hands her the plastic cup, Patricia appears beside the cart, ostensibly to help but her attention fixed squarely on Tamara and Elijah. Did you find that documentation I asked about? Patricia asks, her voice carrying down the aisle. Jessica looks mortified. Pat, we're in the middle of service. It's a simple question, Patricia insists. If everything's on the up and up, there shouldn't be a problem showing proof. Tamara feels her chest tighten, her free hand automatically reaching for her purse where Elijah's birth certificate is stored. Then she stops herself. No, this has gone beyond the usual uncomfortable questions. This is harassment. I showed my ID and his birth certificate at check-in, she says evenly. I'm not legally required to carry proof of my relationship to my child on my person. Patricia's lips thin. As a flight attendant, I'm responsible for the safety of all passengers, including children who might be in dangerous situations. Are you suggesting my son is in danger? Tamara asks, her voice rising slightly. Beside her, Margaret has gone very still, her book forgotten in her lap. I'm suggesting, Patricia says with exaggerated patience, that it's unusual for a child with his coloring to be with someone of your background. Human trafficking is real and we're trained to spot suspicious situations. The word trafficking drops like a bomb in the quiet cabin. Nearby passengers turn in their seats, craning to see what's happening. Elijah stirs in Tamara's arms, sensing the tension in his mother's body. This is completely inappropriate, Margaret says suddenly, her voice firm. You're making assumptions based solely on the color of their skin. Patricia turns her cold gaze to Margaret. Ma'am, this doesn't concern you. It concerns all of us when someone is being harassed for no reason, Margaret replies. The confrontation has drawn the attention of more passengers now. The businessman across the aisle has removed his headphones. A teenager 2 rows ahead is filming discreetly with her phone. Jessica attempts to defuse the situation. Patricia, we should continue with service. If there's a legitimate concern, we can discuss it privately. But Patricia seems determined, perhaps emboldened by the audience. I need to see documentation proving that baby is yours, she insists, addressing Tamara directly. Otherwise, I'll need to alert the captain about a possible trafficking situation. Tamara's hands begin to shake with a combination of rage and humiliation. Elijah is fully awake now, his blue eyes wide and frightened by the tension surrounding him. He begins to whimper. This is ridiculous, Tamara says, fighting to keep her voice steady. You're traumatizing my child because you can't believe a black woman could have a light-skinned baby. Do you question white parents with darker-skinned children? Do you demand paperwork from every parent who doesn't physically match their child? Patricia's face hardens. Don't make this about race. This is about protecting children. This is absolutely about race, Tamara counters. And I'm not showing you anything. I've already been cleared by airport security and your own gate agents. The standoff might have continued indefinitely if not for what happens next. Patricia reaches for the intercom phone, presumably to call the cockpit. She needs to prove that baby is hers. Now. That's when Margaret stands up, pulling out her phone with steady hands. I think we all need a record of this, she says, her voice cutting through the tension. Please continue explaining why this mother needs to prove her baby belongs to her. The red recording light blinks on, capturing Patricia's suddenly uncertain expression. And just like that, the balance of power shifts. Other passengers, sensing the gravity of what's happening, follow Margaret's lead. Phones emerge from pockets and purses, cameras pointing toward the confrontation. Jessica steps back from the beverage cart, her face a mask of professional neutrality that doesn't quite hide her disapproval of her colleagues' actions. Patricia falters, visibly recalculating now that she's being documented from multiple angles. I'm just following protocol, she says, her voice less curt. What protocol exactly? Asks a man in a business suit several rows ahead, his phone also recording. The one where you harass mothers based on skin color. That's not what this is about, Patricia sputters. A woman across the aisle speaks up. I'm a family law attorney, and I can assure you there is no legal requirement for a parent to carry documentation proving their relationship to their child on a domestic flight. Patricia looks around at the sea of recording devices, at the faces ranging from openly hostile to quietly disapproving. Her authority, so confidently wielded moments ago, seems to evaporate in the face of this collective witness. Jessica touches her colleague's arm. Patricia, we need to continue service. Now. For a moment, it seems Patricia might continue to press the issue. Then another flight attendant appears from the front of the plane, older, with the stripes of a chief flight attendant on her uniform. She takes in the scene with a quick, professional glance. What's happening here? She asks, her tone making it clear she expects a concise answer. Before anyone else can speak, Margaret steps in. This flight attendant, she gestures to Patricia, has been demanding that this mother prove her baby is really hers, apparently because they have different skin tones. Several of us felt it was inappropriate and began recording the interaction. The chief flight attendant's expression remains neutral, but her eyes sharpen. Patricia, I need you in the galley. Now. She turns to Tamara. Ma'am, I apologize for any distress this has caused you and your child. Please let me know if there's anything we can do to make the remainder of your flight more comfortable. Patricia opens her mouth as if to object, then closes it again. With a final, resentful glance at Tamara, she follows the chief flight attendant toward the front of the plane. A collective exhale seems to pass through the cabin. The phones gradually lower, though no one deletes their recordings. Jessica continues with the beverage service as if nothing unusual has happened, but her smile for Tamara is genuine and apologetic. Before you see how this ends, make sure you're subscribed to our channel so you don't miss any of our compelling real-life stories. Hit that notification bell to be alerted when we post new content. Tamara sits back in her seat, her heart still racing. Elijah has settled again, fascinated by the elephant toy Margaret gave him. The older woman reaches across the empty middle seat to squeeze Tamara's hand. You handled that with incredible grace, Margaret says quietly. Tamara manages a shaky smile. Practice makes perfect, I guess. You shouldn't have to practice dealing with that kind of ignorance, Margaret replies. Then after a moment's hesitation, would it be all right if I shared that video? People need to see this still happens. Tamara considers the question. Part of her wants to say no to keep this humiliating experience private. But another part, the part that's had to explain her son's appearance countless times, the part that's grown weary of defending her motherhood, recognizes the power in making such moments visible. Yes, she says finally, share it. Maybe it will make someone think twice before questioning another parent. The remainder of the flight passes without incident. Patricia doesn't return to their section of the cabin. The chief flight attendant stops by once more to check on them and to discreetly slip Tamara her card with contact information for customer relations. Several passengers make a point of stopping by Tamara's seat as they prepare for landing, offering quiet words of support or simply smiling at Elijah. As the plane begins its descent into Chicago, Tamara gazes out the window at the sprawling city below. Her mother will be waiting at the arrival gate, eager to embrace her grandson. For the next 3 days, she'll be surrounded by family and friends who have never questioned her relationship to Elijah, who see both of them for exactly who they are. The plane touches down with a gentle bump. Passengers begin the familiar ritual of gathering belongings, checking phones, preparing to disembark. Margaret helps Tamara organize her things while still entertaining Elijah. Will someone be meeting you? Margaret asks as they wait for the seatbelt sign to turn off. My mother, Tamara confirms. She's probably been at the gate for hours already. Margaret smiles. Grandmothers are like that. She hesitates, then pulls a business card from her purse. I'm a retired civil rights attorney. If you ever want to talk about what happened today, or if that video ends up having consequences, please call me. Tamara accepts the card, touched by the offer. Thank you for everything. As they file slowly toward the exit, Tamara notices Patricia standing stiffly by the cockpit door, carefully avoiding eye contact with departing passengers. The chief flight attendant, however, makes a point of meeting Tamara's gaze. Again, my sincere apologies for your experience today, she says quietly as Tamara passes. I assure you it will be addressed. Outside in the terminal, Margaret gives Elijah's cheek a gentle pat before heading toward baggage claim. Safe travels, little one. And remember what I said, she adds to Tamara. Tamara nods, watching the older woman disappear into the crowd. Then she turns toward the arrival area where, sure enough, her mother is already waving frantically. There's Grandma, she tells Elijah, who bounces excitedly in her arms at the sight of the familiar face. Her mother envelops them both in a fierce hug. Let me look at my babies, she says, stepping back to admire them. The flight was okay, no problems. Tamara hesitates, then shakes her head. Nothing we couldn't handle. As they walk toward baggage claim, her mother chattering about the church preparations and who's eager to meet Elijah, Tamara's phone buzzes with a notification. It's a text from an unknown number, Margaret, with a link to a video already going viral on Twitter. Black mother forced to prove her baby is hers on flight. Watch how passengers responded. The video has 50,000 views already and climbing rapidly. Tamara pauses, watching the numbers tick upward. For a moment, she feels a surge of anxiety at being thrust into the public eye. Then she looks down at Elijah, content in his grandmother's arms, and at her mother, who has always been her fiercest defender. Everything okay? Her mother asks, noticing her distraction. Tamara tucks her phone away and smiles. Yes, she says with newfound certainty. Everything is exactly as it should be. The retirement celebration for Evelyn Jackson, Tamara's mother, spans 3 full days, a testament to the impact she's had on the South Side Chicago community she's served for 3 decades. Friday evening begins with a formal dinner at her church's fellowship hall, transformed for the occasion with white tablecloths, flower arrangements, and photos chronicling Evelyn's career. Tamara sits at the head table, Elijah propped on her lap, surrounded by her mother's closest colleagues and friends. The baby, dressed in a tiny bow tie and cardigan that matches his grandfather's old church suit, has become the evening's unofficial mascot. He's passed from arm to arm, cooed over and bounced on knees, his presence a physical reminder of Evelyn's legacy continuing into the next generation. Look at how he has Evelyn's chin, remarks Mrs. Patterson, the church organist who's known Tamara since birth. And those eyes, well, they may be blue, but they're observant like his grandmother's. Tamara smiles, watching as her son charms yet another admirer. Here, in this community that has known her family for generations, Elijah's appearance raises no eyebrows, prompts no awkward questions. The women who have watched Tamara grow up simply incorporate him into the fold, seeing the connections rather than the differences. Throughout the evening, Tamara's phone continues to buzz with notifications. Margaret's video is gaining traction, shared across multiple platforms, spawning heated discussions about racial profiling, implicit bias, and the policing of black motherhood. Tamara keeps the phone face down, determined not to let the morning's ugliness intrude on this celebration. Her mother, however, is too perceptive to be completely fooled. As the dessert plates are cleared away and guests begin to mingle, Evelyn pulls Tamara into a quiet corner. What aren't you telling me? She asks directly. You've been checking your phone all night with that look on your face, the one you've had since you were 7 and trying to hide something. Tamara hesitates, reluctant to burden her mother with the incident during her special weekend. But Evelyn Jackson has never been one to accept half-truths or deflections. There was an issue on the flight, Tamara admits finally. A flight attendant who questioned whether Elijah was really mine. Evelyn's expression hardens, the celebration momentarily forgotten. What happened? Tamara explains briefly, downplaying her own distress but unable to minimize the public nature of the confrontation or its aftermath now spreading across social media. Show me, Evelyn demands, holding out her hand for the phone. Tamara passes it over reluctantly. Evelyn watches the video, her face growing increasingly still, a sign her former students would recognize as dangerous waters ahead. When it ends, she hands the phone back without comment, then pulls Tamara into a fierce hug. I am so proud of you, she whispers fiercely. So proud of how you handled that. Mom, it's your weekend. No, Evelyn cuts her off. No, baby girl, this is exactly what we need to be talking about, even on my weekend, especially on my weekend. She looks around the room at the community gathered to honor her life's work in education. What was all this for, if not to make the world better for children like Elijah, if not to raise daughters like you who know their worth and stand their ground? Tamara feels tears threatening and blinks them back. Her mother has always been like this, able to transform personal pain into purpose, to see the broader significance in individual struggles. It's what made her an exceptional educator, what earned her the devotion of this room full of people. Now, Evelyn says, straightening her shoulders and adjusting her elegant silver dress, let me introduce my grandson properly to a few more people. Then we'll decide what we want to do about this airline situation. Her tone makes it clear that nothing is not an option being considered. The next morning dawns bright and clear, a perfect June day in Chicago. Tamara wakes early, her body still on Minneapolis time, and finds her mother already in the kitchen of the family home, Elijah propped in a borrowed high chair while Evelyn makes pancakes. We've been having a conversation about educational policy, Evelyn informs her, flipping a perfect golden circle onto a waiting plate. Elijah has some progressive views on standardized testing. Tamara laughs, pouring herself coffee from the pot her mother has already prepared. I'm sure he does. How did you sleep? Evelyn asks, her casual tone not quite masking her concern. Better than expected, Tamara admits. Its true exhaustion had claimed her despite the day's events and the videos continuing spread online. Good. Evelyn slides a plate of pancakes across the counter. Because today's going to be busy. Church picnic at noon, and she pauses, studying her daughter's face, a call with the airline's customer relations department at 10. Tamara nearly chokes on her coffee. Mom, what did you do? Made a phone call, Evelyn says simply. Got the ball rolling. They've seen the video, of course. It's approaching 1 million views now. They're eager to address the situation proactively, their words, not mine. I don't know if I want to deal with that today, Tamara says honestly. Can't it wait until we get home? Evelyn's expression softens. Of course it can if that's what you want, but consider this, right now they're scared, right now they're willing to listen. And right now you have the chance to make sure what happened to you doesn't happen to the next mother. It's a perspective Tamara hasn't fully considered, that her individual experience might translate into institutional change. She thinks about Margaret's encouragement to share the video, about the thousands of comments from people expressing outrage, solidarity, and sadly, recognition of similar experiences. Okay, she says finally. I'll take the call. Evelyn nods, satisfied. Good. And I'll be right beside you. The call with the airline's customer relations team is brief but substantive. The representative, a woman whose carefully modulated voice suggests years of experience handling delicate situations, offers an immediate and unequivocal apology. What happened on that flight violated both our policies and our values as an organization, she says. We are taking this matter extremely seriously. Tamara, with her mother's steadying presence beside her, finds her voice stronger than expected. I appreciate that, but what I really want to know is what happens next. How will you ensure this doesn't happen to someone else? There's a brief pause, then. Patricia, the flight attendant in question, has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. But beyond individual accountability, we recognize this indicates a need for systemic change. We're reviewing our training protocols, particularly around issues of implicit bias and cultural sensitivity. That's a start, Evelyn interjects, her principal's voice impossible to ignore. But specific actions would be more reassuring than general reviews. The representative seems to gather herself. You're absolutely right, Mrs. Jackson. In concrete terms, we're implementing mandatory anti-bias training for all customer-facing staff beginning next month. We're also revising our procedures regarding documentation requirements for families traveling with minors to ensure they're applied consistently and appropriately. The conversation continues for another 20 minutes, with the airline outlining additional steps and Tamara and Evelyn offering suggestions based on their own experiences. By the end, there are commitments to follow-up meetings, to involving Tamara in reviewing new training materials if she's willing, and to a formal public statement acknowledging the incident. As they hang up, Evelyn squeezes her daughter's hand. See, your voice matters, your experience matters. Tamara nods, a complex mixture of emotions washing over her. There's validation in being heard, in having her experience acknowledged as wrong rather than dismissed or minimized. But there's also exhaustion at having to navigate these waters at all, at having her motherhood constantly questioned or qualified. I just want to be Elijah's mom, she says quietly. Not a symbol or a statement or a teaching moment for someone else. Evelyn's eyes fill with understanding. I know, baby, I know. She looks over at Elijah, happily mashing banana into the high chair tray, blissfully unaware of the complexities swirling around him. But sometimes being his mom means being all those other things too, at least for now. The church picnic provides a welcome distraction from the morning's intensity. Held in a nearby park, it's a joyous, informal counterpoint to the previous evening's formal dinner. Children race across the grass, elders share gossip over potato salad, and the air smells of barbecue and summer flowers. Tamara finds a shady spot under a massive oak tree, spreading a blanket for Elijah to explore. He's mastered sitting up on his own but is still wobbly, toppling over with comic timing whenever something catches his interest. His delight in the simplest discoveries, a fallen leaf, the texture of the blanket, the dappled sunlight through the branches reminds Tamara to stay present, to find joy in the moment despite the week's complications. Reverend Johnson, the pastor who has known Tamara since her baptism, settles his considerable frame onto the blanket beside them. In his 70s now, with silver hair and laugh lines etched deep around his eyes, he's been a constant in the Jackson family's life through celebrations and sorrows alike. This little man, he says, gently chucking Elijah under the chin, has his grandmother's spirit. I can see it already. God help us all, Tamara laughs. One Evelyn Jackson in the family is plenty. Oh, I don't know about that, the Reverend muses. The world could use a few more Evelyn's people who stand their ground and lift others up along the way. He studies Tamara's face. Your mother told me about what happened on your flight. Tamara sighs. Of course she did. In this community, there are few secrets, especially from Reverend Johnson, who has served as counselor and confidant to generations. It wasn't the first time something like that has happened, she admits. Just the first time it was so public. The Reverend nods thoughtfully. You know, when your mother first started teaching, she wasn't welcomed in certain classrooms. There were parents who questioned her qualifications, who didn't want their children learning from a black woman. He reaches out to steady Elijah, who has lunged enthusiastically toward a butterfly. She could have found somewhere easier to work, somewhere with fewer battles to fight, but she stayed. She said change doesn't come from avoiding difficult spaces. It comes from transforming them. The parallel isn't lost on Tamara. Her mother has never been one to retreat from challenge, has always believed in engagement rather than avoidance as the path to progress. It's a legacy Tamara hadn't fully appreciated until now, watching her own child navigate a world still structured by the same prejudices her mother had confronted decades earlier. I'm not sure I have her strength, Tamara confesses. Reverend Johnson chuckles. Nobody is born with strength, child. It's built through use, like any muscle. He gestures toward Elijah, who has finally mastered rolling from his back to his stomach after weeks of frustrated attempts. Just like that little one, they're learning by doing, growing stronger with every try. As the afternoon unfolds, Tamara finds herself surrounded by the extended family she's missed since moving to Minneapolis. Not just blood relatives, but the network of church members, former students, and community elders who have known her since childhood. They pass Elijah among them, exclaiming over his growth, predicting his future based on the shape of his hands or the intensity of his gaze. Doctor's hands, declares Mrs. Wilson, who retired from nursing after 50 years at Cook County Hospital. Look at how carefully he examines everything. Nah, he's got musician's fingers, counters Mr. Davis, who still teaches piano to neighborhood children at 82. Long and nimble. Bring him by the studio when he's a little older, I'll start him on scales. No one questions his place in this family, this community. No one asks for explanations or documentation. The acceptance is so complete, so unconscious, that Tamara feels the knot that's been sitting in her chest since the flight incident finally began to loosen. Her phone, which she's been ignoring throughout the afternoon, buzzes persistently in her pocket. When she finally checks it, there are dozens of missed calls, messages, and notifications. The video has gone fully viral, picked up by national news outlets, spawning hashtags and heated online debates. Margaret has sent several updates, including screenshots of the airline's official statement promising a full investigation and review of policies. There are also messages from Minneapolis colleagues expressing support, neighbors offering help when she returns, even a tentative text from Michael, the first contact since his last postcard months ago. Saw the video. Are you and the baby okay? Tamara stares at this last message, unsure how to respond or whether to respond at all. Michael had walked away so completely, had signed away his rights without hesitation. Does he deserve a place in their lives now, drawn back by a viral moment rather than genuine connection? She puts the phone away without replying, deciding that's a question for another day. Right now, surrounded by the authentic community that has supported her family for generations, she doesn't need the validation or concern of a man who chose absence over presence. The final day of Evelyn's retirement celebration centers on Sunday service at Faith Temple Baptist Church, where the Jackson family has worshipped for 4 generations. The historic building with its soaring stained glass windows and polished wooden pews is filled beyond capacity, community members spilling into the vestibule and standing along the walls. Tamara sits in the front row, Elijah dressed in his Sunday best, a tiny suit with a clip-on bow tie that he keeps trying to remove. Her mother, resplendent in white, will be honored during the service for her decades of service to the community both as an educator and a church leader. As the choir begins the opening hymn, their voices rising in perfect harmony, Tamara feels a sense of peace settle over her. This is home, not just the physical space of the church or Chicago, but the spiritual and emotional home created by connection and shared history. It's what she wants for Elijah, this foundation of belonging that can anchor him through whatever storms life brings. Reverend Johnson's sermon touches on themes of service, legacy, and the obligation to create pathways for those who follow. Though he never directly mentions the incident on the plane, his words about bearing witness and standing firm against injustice feel particularly resonant. When we see wrong being done, he intones, his voice filling the sanctuary, we have a choice. We can look away pretending it isn't happening. We can watch in silence, bearing witness but offering no aid. Or we can step forward, using whatever tools God has given us to right the balance. It is in that stepping forward that we become who we are meant to be. After the service, during the reception in the church hall, Tamara's phone rings with a number she doesn't recognize. She almost ignores it, but something prompts her to step outside and answer. Ms. Jackson. This is Emma Chen from the Chicago Tribune. I'm hoping to speak with you about the incident on your flight Friday morning. The video has raised important questions about racial profiling, and I'm sorry, Tamara interrupts gently. This is my mother's retirement weekend. I'm not giving interviews right now. There's a pause, then. Of course, I understand. Would you be willing to talk later this week? Your experience resonates with so many people, and having your perspective would add important context to the conversation happening right now. Tamara hesitates. Her instinct is to decline to protect her privacy and Elijah's, but she remembers Reverend Johnson's words about stepping forward, about using the tools available to effect change. Perhaps her voice could be one of those tools. I'll think about it, she says finally. Can I call you back tomorrow? Absolutely, the reporter responds, clearly pleased to have not received an outright rejection. And please know that we want to approach this with sensitivity and respect for you and your son. As Tamara ends the call, she finds her mother standing in the doorway, watching her with knowing eyes. Reporter, Evelyn asks, though it's clear she already knows the answer. Tamara nods. Chicago Tribune wants an interview. And what do you want? Evelyn asks, the question gentle but direct. It's the fundamental question, isn't it? What does Tamara want, not just regarding the interview, but in the larger context of what's happening? Does she want to retreat into privacy, to focus solely on raising Elijah away from public scrutiny? Or does she want to engage with the conversation her experience has sparked, to potentially influence how others perceive and treat families that don't fit conventional expectations? I want Elijah to grow up in a world where his family doesn't need explaining, she says finally, where he isn't constantly asked to justify his existence or his connection to me. Evelyn nods, understanding the deeper truth beneath her daughter's words. Then you already know what to do. The return flight to Minneapolis is scheduled for late afternoon. As Tamara packs their belongings now, including several new outfits for Elijah, gifts from church members who couldn't resist spoiling Evelyn's first grandchild, she finds herself mentally preparing for the journey in a way she hadn't before. This time, she knows what might await them. This time, she's ready. Her mother drives them to the airport, the car loaded with not just their luggage but containers of leftover food, books Evelyn insists Tamara should read to Elijah, and a framed family photo from the retirement dinner. You call me when you land, Evelyn instructs as she helps unload at the departure's curb. And think about what we discussed coming back for Christmas, maybe looking at positions here instead of Minneapolis. It's an old conversation, Evelyn's gentle campaign to bring her daughter and grandson back to Chicago permanently. Tamara smiles, neither committing nor refusing. The events of the past few days have certainly highlighted the value of having family close by, of raising Elijah within the embrace of a community that sees him fully. The farewell is emotional but brief. Neither Jackson woman is given to prolonged goodbyes. Evelyn hugs them both fiercely, whispers something in Elijah's ear that makes him giggle, then watches as they disappear through the sliding doors into the terminal. Check-in proceeds smoothly, the agent professional and efficient. Security, too, passes without incident. The TSA officer barely glances at Elijah's documentation, more concerned with the bottle of formula in Tamara's carry-on. It feels anticlimactic after the tension of their outbound journey. Tamara finds herself almost searching for problems, for the familiar friction of having to justify her relationship to her child. Its absence is both a relief and, strangely, a letdown, as if she's prepared for a battle that isn't materializing. At the gate, she notices a few people glancing their way, then quickly looking down at phones or tablets. One woman nudges her companion, whispers something behind her hand. Tamara realizes with a start that they might be recognized from the video, which has now been viewed millions of times across various platforms. She straightens her spine, adjusts Elijah more securely in his carrier. Let them look. Let them whisper. She is exactly who she is supposed to be, Elijah's mother, no qualifications or explanations needed. Boarding is called, families with small children invited to pre-board as usual. Tamara joins the line, presents her boarding pass without offering additional documentation. The gate agent smiles, coos at Elijah, and waves them through without hesitation. On the plane, a different crew greets passengers. The flight attendants are uniformly professional, their smiles neither too warm nor too cold. One, an older man with salt and pepper hair, offers to help Tamara stow her carry-on. Another provides an extra blanket for Elijah without being asked. Their seat again by the window, again with an empty middle beside it, feels like familiar territory now. Tamara settles Elijah on her lap, prepares a bottle for takeoff, goes through the motions she's learned work best for air travel with an infant. No one questions them. No one stares or whispers or demands proof. The normalcy of it all, the simple dignity of being treated like any other passenger, any other mother, feels like a victory and an indictment all at once. Why should this baseline respect feel remarkable? As the plane begins its taxi toward the runway, Tamara gazes out at Chicago's skyline receding in the distance. Her phone buzzes with a text from Margaret. "How are my favorite travelers doing?" Tamara smiles, typing back a quick response. Then she looks at her son, at his perfect face and the future stretching before him, a future that might, because of one difficult day and the courage of strangers who refuse to be silent witnesses, be a little more just, a little more kind. "Ready to go home, little one?" she whispers, kissing his forehead as the plane lifts into the clouds. Elijah responds with a gummy smile that could melt the coldest heart. And in that smile, Tamara sees not just his father's blue eyes or her own determined spirit, but something entirely new. A promise that the world he grows up in might be better than the one she has known. In the weeks following their return to Minneapolis, the story continues to unfold in ways Tamara couldn't have anticipated. The airline issues a formal apology, announces comprehensive anti-bias training for all staff, and creates a new position, Director of Inclusive Customer Experience, specifically tasked with reviewing and revising policies that might disproportionately impact certain travelers. Patricia, the flight attendant, is ultimately terminated after an internal investigation reveals previous complaints of similar behavior. She appears briefly on a cable news show, attempting to defend her actions as following protocol and protecting children, but the explanation falls flat against the clear evidence of the video. Margaret's original recording has been viewed over 20 million times. Tamara eventually agrees to a single interview with the Chicago Tribune reporter, focusing not on the specifics of the incident, but on the broader issues it represents. The assumptions made about families that don't fit conventional molds, the burden of constantly having to prove legitimacy, the exhaustion of navigating a world that questions your most fundamental relationships. The article, thoughtful and nuanced, generates its own wave of responses. Tamara receives hundreds of messages from other parents sharing similar experiences, white parents with adopted children of color, mixed-race couples, grandparents raising grandchildren of different ethnicities. Their stories form a tapestry of modern family life that defies simple categorization, that challenges narrow definitions of what belonging looks like. 3 months after the flight, as summer gives way to early autumn in Minneapolis, Tamara receives an unexpected package at the hospital where she works. Inside is a children's book titled, "Families Come in Every Color," with a note from the publisher. "Ms. Jackson, your story inspired this book. We hope it helps children like your son grow up in a world where all families are recognized and respected." Enclosed is the first copy off the press. The book, beautifully illustrated, shows families of all configurations. 2 moms, single dads, multiracial households, grandparents raising grandchildren, and yes, a black mother with a fair-skinned child whose blue eyes match the sky above them. The final page reads, "Love is what makes a family. Love needs no explanation." Tamara brings the book home to read to Elijah, now 9 months old and crawling everywhere with determined speed. He babbles excitedly at the colorful images, patting the pages with chubby hands, too young to understand the significance of seeing families like his own represented in literature. As she turns the final page, her phone rings her mother, calling for their daily check-in. "How's my grandson today?" Evelyn asks, her voice warm even through the digital connection. "Getting into everything," Tamara laughs. "I turned my back for 2 seconds and he'd somehow pulled all the wipes out of the container." "That's a Jackson for you," Evelyn says proudly. "Always exploring. Listen, I've been thinking about Christmas." "Actually, Mom," Tamara interrupts, a decision crystallizing in that moment. "I've been thinking about that too. What would you say to having a roommate for a while, maybe a couple of roommates?" There's a pause, then Evelyn's voice, cautiously hopeful. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm looking at positions at Children's Memorial," Tamara confirms. "Nothing definite yet, but it feels right." Especially now. The past months have clarified what matters most. Having Elijah grow up surrounded by family and community, by people who see him fully and love him completely. Minneapolis has been good to them in many ways, but Chicago is home in a deeper sense. "Well, hallelujah," Evelyn says, not bothering to hide her delight. "Your old room is waiting for you both. Just say when." After they hang up, Tamara sits with Elijah on the living room floor, watching as he stacks and knocks over blocks with equal enthusiasm. 9 months old, and already he's developing his own personality, stubborn like his mother, curious about everything, quick to smile but thoughtful in a way that sometimes seems beyond his years. Soon enough, he'll begin to understand the complexities of the world around him. He'll notice the looks, the questions, the assumptions people make based on appearance. He'll have to navigate the space between how others see him and how he sees himself. But he won't do it alone. He'll have his mother, who has already fought battles on his behalf. He'll have his grandmother, whose lifetime of standing firm has created pathways for others to follow. He'll have a community that claims him as their own, that sees his belonging as natural and unquestionable. And perhaps because of what happened on that flight, because of one mother's refusal to accept humiliation, one passenger's decision to bear witness, one community's choice to stand in solidarity, he'll grow up in a world slightly more prepared to see families like his own not as exceptions requiring explanation, but simply as families, deserving of the same respect and recognition as any other. Tamara lifts Elijah into her arms, breathes in the sweet scent of his hair, feels the solid weight of him against her chest. This child, this love, needs no explanation, no documentation, no proof. "You and me, little one," she whispers. "We're exactly as we should be." Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to share this story if it moved you. Your voice matters in creating the change we all want to see.